welcome to the May 19, 2021 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. This format enables the City Council to meet and take care of business while keeping everyone safe. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling in to one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. Thank you for joining us. And with that brief introduction, we are ready to begin with our first item, and I will turn it over to the manager.
Thank you, Mayor. You might recall that when we were in the first early stages of COVID, I had arranged for Chief Heppel to come and just give sort of regular updates to the council because we knew you were getting a lot of questions and needed a lot of information. And so this is a follow-up to your earlier work sessions on some of the work we're doing in response to the unhoused population. And Christy and Matt are here today as an update. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of them.
Thank you, Sarah. Very much appreciate that. We're excited to be back. And I think Matt's going to drive our slide deck today. So I'm joined today by Matt Rodriguez, Public Works Director, and Reagan Watches. Reagan's our Homeless Services Manager, and I think that most of you are very familiar with her work. And the nice thing about Reagan being with us today is that she's going to be able to provide a lot of information about how the site programming, planning work is going and things like that. And we'll also be providing more information about the site review and how that's going. And as Sarah said, with the regular updates, we're planning that we'll come back kind of on a monthly basis. And so we'll be coming back with more. But we're very happy to be here today to tell you where things are at. So on the second slide that's in the deck, I just kind of wanted to remind people that what we're doing is continuing to approach this from a systems perspective. And you might recall the homeless implementation plan pipeline. And the work that we're doing is really focused on the homeless and unsheltered. But I want to let you know that there are so many other things going on that relate to other parts of this system. And one of them is that we're working closely with Lane County right now on the transition of the 100 River Ave site from a COVID response facility to a 75-bed low barrier shelter and navigation center. And really excited to be part of hoping, to get that up and running by next July 1st. And so that's pretty exciting work that's happening. We also provided an update around the Day Resource Center and the whitebird use of that facility for the summer to provide some treatment and behavioral health assistance. And we're just really excited about that partnership as well and being able to use that facility in such a positive way to help people. The system that we're working in, you might recall when Matt and I last were here, is really related to using a unified command structure. And so we've really getting to a point where we're feeling like the team is just working like a well-oiled machine. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 staff members that are devoted to this work, in addition to all of the other service areas that are supporting this work. And just as a reminder, we have 4 major components that we're focusing on. You heard this from Matt last time we met, which is securing new sites, expanding our outreach, ensuring compliance, and really working with and engaging with our partners. And our partners are, many, many levels. So it includes the provider partners, it includes the agency partners such as Lane County, and it also includes really important connection with our business community and really understanding what the needs of the business community is. And so grateful to have the Eugene Chamber representatives working with us so closely. It's been a really critical part of our work thus far. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the current conditions, kind of a status update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Matt Rodriguez, the Acting Public Works Director. Some updates on current conditions. So in April, our homeless by name count was 2,445. That's up 10 people from March and down about 300 people from the same time period last year. We continue to manage 2 large temporary camps at Washington Jefferson Park and 13th Avenue. There are about 220 tents currently at Washington Jefferson and about 75 tents at 13th Avenue. And we are in the process right now of actually getting a water meter and hookup put in by eWeb for that site. We're going to be doing a survey of campers at these 2 locations in the next few weeks to learn more about their needs as we start to develop the safe sites. Social service providers and outreach teams continue to meet people at both locations, as well as other distributed camp locations around the city. Staff are monitoring about half a dozen other larger camps that are spread throughout the city. And we continue to see some spot fires at camps that are working actively with the fire marshal's office to assess fire risk at temporary camps and recommend best practices for fire prevention management. This slide shows our request for service overtime for urban camping. It's broken down by 3 categories: tent camping in the right-of-way, camping in parks, and vehicle camping. I want to stress that these numbers are not the number of people camping, but the number of requests for service that we get from either the public or from internal requests. You can see that for right-of-way camping, which is in green towards the bottom, we actually are seeing a slight decrease. Parks camping is staying steady, and we have a slight uptick in vehicle camping in the right-of-way. This is a map of the work orders related to urban camping from the past month, and a work order is different than a request for service. So the request for service is someone saying, we're asking that work be done. A work order is when we actually take action at a location. We've seen a rise in the past few months in the number of work orders, and it's consistent with the number of people that we are seeing camping in our system, as we are seeing a rise in different parts of our park system and in vehicle camping. Let's see. In April, our teams posted 79 48-hour warnings and 121 24-hour notices at camps. The number of 24-hour notices is higher, as we do not provide a 48-hour warning when people are camping in areas that are high priority for enforcement. So those are things like next to waterways and playgrounds. So an update on parking restrictions. Last month, City Council supported a plan presented by staff to help manage camping and vehicles through regulation of parking on streets within industrial and commercial areas. Staff are working to begin outreach to these areas and have developed our internal workflow to address the needs, execute the administrative orders to support the signage changes, and install the signs. We're continuing to respond to requests for service related to vehicle camping, especially in West Eugene, and in some cases where ongoing impacts to businesses and employees have been especially severe, we're using temporary parking restrictions as a tool until the plan changes can be made. There will be a public hearing on June 14th on the potential code changes related to enforcement of vehicle parking. So now for a follow-up to our April 28th action on establishing temporary safe places for people to live in tents and in their vehicles. We'll look at site review, service models, and coordination with partners and communication. So our Land for Shelter team has been using a broad set of criteria to compile a list of potential shelter sites for tent and vehicle camping. We've shared a portion of the siting criteria that was included in your agenda item summary. The goal is to find as many sites as possible that meet these criteria so they can be further assessed through the Eugene Planning and Development Department, guidelines for suitability as temporary or permanent sites. And when we are talking about permanent sites, we're thinking of the ability for these pieces of property to potentially become low-income housing or permanent supportive housing. At this time, we've narrowed the list down to 23 potential city-owned properties that need further review, and 12 private properties that are suitable through the criteria that we went through and want to look at more closely. The current range of lease costs for the private property run from $1,000 per an acre per a month up to $5,000 a month. Depends on size, location, and current use. And the range of purchase prices is between 900,000 and just under 9 million. And again, that really depends on the site and type of use that's there and the potential for it to be used in different ways. Site preparation considerations are unique to each property and will continue to be assessed by planning and development and our shelter development team. Overall, this team has reviewed over 308 city-owned sites and approximately 20 private sites. So they're really working through a lot of different locations and applying the lens of what makes sense. So the Unified Command has been working with service providers and other partners to develop model site plans and programming for safe tent and parking sites. And I'm going to hand over the presentation to Regan Watches from the city manager's office now. She's been helping to lead this work and can provide a more detailed update.
Hi all, good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. Nice to see you today. I'll be talking, as Matt and Christy said, about program planning and site planning for these new sites. And I apologize, can you all hear me okay? There's some landscapers next door, okay. So the goal of the new Safe Sleep sites is to create safe, sanitary, and supportive places to shelter and sites that are safe and low impact on property owners, neighbors, and the public. City staff have been meeting weekly with representatives from about 8 social service provider agencies and advocacy groups in Eugene over the last several weeks. We've been obtaining really helpful input and feedback on program models and elements to support people who are currently sleeping unsheltered. Topics for those meetings have included site amenities, operations frameworks and management plans, coordinated referral and intake processes, and coordinated site services. We'll be continuing to meet with providers as we move forward. We also continue to have conversations with other cities about similar sites they have established from smaller locations like Medford and Walla Walla to San Diego, Portland, and San Francisco. We've been working with and getting input and support on this work from internal staff from across various departments, including those who are involved in camp response and camp support at Washington, Jefferson, and 13th and Chambers. And we've been working with the Land for Shelter team to help inform the work and align our efforts. In a week or so, as Matt mentioned, we'll also be starting some targeted outreach and assessments to people camping at Washington, Jefferson, and 13th and Chambers to help us get a better understanding of who is camping there and particular needs and priorities we should be aware of. We'll also be working with providers to develop strategies to maintain consistent contact with people camping in the current locations and assist with the transition of folks when and as new locations become available. A clear thing that we've heard from providers is that there are a number of needs that need to be taken into account as we think about creating safe and supportive spaces for people sleeping outdoors. This includes populations with possible health conditions and folks with significant behavioral health needs, which has implications for the site planning, management, and services provided. Things we're thinking about and getting information from the surveys that I mentioned will be around understanding needs and priorities for folks, things like pet accommodations, accessibility and other types of special accommodations, established groups who want to stay together, parking, proximity to services, and other types of things. Essentially, we're wanting to make sure we're aware of and can plan for how to support people at these new sites while finding ways to also build a sense of community at the new sites, as we recognize the contributions that community building opportunities can make to healing, safety, and stability. Similar to the city's rest stops, operating entities that the city will contract with for these new sites will be responsible for intake, managing the social dynamics of the sites and compliance with rules and agreements and community agreements, coordinating ongoing site infrastructure needs, being accessible and responsive to neighbor concerns, and coordinating with the city and other partners. We're currently planning for new sites to have daily on-site staffing as well as nightly overnight staff. There will be clear rules and agreements established for these new sites to help ensure the health and safety of the people staying at the site as well as neighbors to the site. Provider agencies will be responsible for making sure people understand and follow site rules. I won't list all the rules that will be part of the management plan, but they include no violent or threatening behavior, no weapons or illegal drug use on site, no trespassing or theft on neighboring properties, trash must be deposited in trash receptacles, no overnight visitors, people must cook in designated areas, people must keep belongings in their designated area, participants must adhere to best practices for preparing and storing food, heating, water, and waste management. So those are just some of the basic rules that will be in place to, again, ensure the health and safety of people at the site and neighbors. The managing agency will also be expected to have documented policies and processes for addressing rules violations, including rules violations that would merit immediate termination of participation. They'll also be expected to have grievance policies and procedures in place for site participants. In regard to access and intake for these sites, there's support among our providers for a coordinated system of entry and referral. There's acknowledgement that we need places where people will be able to immediately go with quick and easy entry. So balancing that with the fact that we'll have, multiple sites across the city is what a well-functioning coordinated referral system will be able to help with, while supporting people into sites that are likely to work best with them and can meet their needs. This will also allow for lateral referrals if someone isn't working out in one site, but may be able to go to another site that would offer a better fit. There's a strong consensus among providers and other stakeholders that service provision for these new sites is vitally important. Providers are enthusiastic about collaborating with the city and Lane County and among one another to create a support system for folks and meet different needs across the sites. And by services, we're thinking about things like case management, housing navigation, medical and behavioral healthcare support, peer support, and potentially others. Next slide, please. So this is an initial site plan or artist rendering of a site plan drafted to show how we envision creating sites that will be safe and organized, that provide access to key amenities, and that incorporate elements of community space and design to help build positive camp cultures at these sites. Essential elements of the site plan include designated 12 by 12 foot spaces for 40 tents with 12-foot spacing in between, some creation of smaller pods within the larger site to try to create more of a community feel within the larger site while maintaining sight lines and a structured layout, fencing with secured entry and exit gate, likely with some sort of privacy cloth, bathrooms and hand washing stations, large garbage bins, covered warming and meeting areas, storage space. We're looking into some different storage options for that. Turnaround for vehicles, designated cooking area, potable water, solar charging stations. Our rest stops have incorporated solar charging stations and have been testing a new type of solar charging. So we have this on our radar. And then site dependent, we're certainly exploring the possibilities for electrical and water hookups at new sites as we understand the importance of those amenities, particularly for certain populations with special needs. So availability for hookups is a factor that's being weighted in our site search process. Something important to consider as you look at this is that once specific site, this isn't based on any specific site. So once specific sites are identified, we'll be able to customize plans and create layouts that may look somewhat different from this. And thinking about how to create a more organic community feel through layout and design while maintaining those essential components of safety, management, and amenities. Next slide. Okay. For the vehicle sites, although again, we don't have specific sites yet, so the layout of the exact site will look, the layout of the different sites will look different depending on their unique configurations. The concept is the same. The site plan concept that we've worked up has rows for the vehicles with, again, designated spots for each household and then space in between each household's vehicle. And then we've been drafting site plans that recognize that people or households may come in with different sizes and different types of vehicles and maybe more than one vehicle. So again, there will be designated spaces, bathrooms and hand washing stations for each segment of the site, turnarounds and ability for vehicles to access all the different pull-in spots, dumpsters, central common space and food prep area, and fencing with secured and controlled entry and exit. Next slide. So while we know there will be an initial transition period of getting these sites open, helping people move into them, dialing in the operations and services, a critical goal is helping people stabilize and improve their lives. So in addition to metrics like numbers served and demographics, we'll be watching utilization rates, service engagements, and lengths of stay. And with the provision of services like case management, again, the goal is to help people increase their stability and feel more empowered and supported in taking steps to improve their quality of life. So for increased stability, what we'd be looking to measure are changes and improvements in 4 main categories: their housing situation, So of course, we'd be looking at their exit destination once they leave these sites, their income, their health, and their connection with support systems in the community. We'll be continuing to refine this work on outcomes and metrics. I think you all are aware that we're doing some of this big picture thinking around outcomes and metrics through the Community Safety Initiative, which is really getting a better understanding of what are the real impacts of our strategies and programs. And so we intend to apply that work and learning that we're doing to this effort. Similarly, it's important to us that this effort integrates well into the broader work we're doing around homelessness. For example, we think and we intend that this will enhance our overall efforts to better provide and coordinate shelter services in the community, and will help inform the work we're doing with Lane County on the Navigation Center, for example. The program will have a strong tie as well to the city's work with the county to expand coordinated street outreach and provide an important resource for outreach teams to refer to. The goal is to enhance our overall system, providing people experiencing homelessness with safe, stable places to be, to reduce the impacts of camping in the community, and to create more places where our social service partners can find, connect, and work with people to help them achieve greater stability and improve their lives.
Christy, you're muted.
Thank you. Appreciate that. This next slide is just talking a little bit about the communications work that we're doing. We recognize that there was quite a gap in what people were understanding about what was going on, what people were receiving in terms of response in terms of their questions and their needs that needed to be addressed. And so there's a lot of work that's happening on that front. And the UC has created a web page that we're going to keep updated as we have progress updates, as a place for people to use as a resource to know what's going on in a timely manner. I can't stress enough the importance of the role that Ed Russo, as our business outreach person, is doing in coordinating with businesses, especially in the West Eugene area, to really understand the needs and the problems. And I think that point of contact has been super critical. Ed's also working on some FAQs with the team to try to provide answers many questions as we possibly can to help people feel like they know what's either coming in the near future or what might be happening in the short term. And we're also trying to do a lot more education around the work that Reagan is doing so that people understand what these safe sleeping sites, safe places for people to be, actually will look and function like. And so we're really excited about what's happening with that and trying to make sure that counselors, especially if there are specific things that are happening within your wards, that you're staying updated about that information. And we appreciate your updates that are coming to us as well. So with that, I want to close just by offering up that we will do our best to answer any questions that you have today. And again, just remind you that we'll be coming back with regular updates and information. One of the things I did want to mention is that the last work session, we talked about some of the coordination that we were doing with respect to funding for the work that's moving forward. I want to give a strong shout out to Ethan Nelson, our Intergovernmental Relations Manager, and the work he's doing with the state delegation in getting support for funding needed for the sites and land acquisition. We are very grateful for the work that's happening at the state level and appreciative of the coordination that Ethan has with that group. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you so much. I was eager to hear this report, and I'm really very encouraged. And when I think of what the city has accomplished in the last couple of years in this regard, it is phenomenal. And to see those site plans and to hear about the coordination and to think about that many sites under review, the whole picture is just really, really hopeful to me. So I just really want to appreciate the work and acknowledge the incredible progress that the city teams have done at this. And with that, I have many councilors lining up to speak. So we'll start off with Randy and then Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too want to lend my voice to thank you, Christy, Matt, Reagan, and all the staff that have been involved with this effort. It is making a difference. people are noticing that we are being more responsive, and that's appreciated. Appreciate the assignment of Ed Russo as the business liaison. He has been doing an absolute fantastic job in building credibility out in our business community, which is very, very important. I also want to thank our businesses and workers who have been trying to make this work. And I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, Brittany Quick-Warner, for really stepping up and being a partner. And as I've shared before, I'm hoping that what we learned from this and the relationships we develop and build will progress us into potentially more good work in the future, especially around community prosperity. With that said, I do have some questions. The first one is, and I know you're working on this and I appreciate it, but is there anything we can do as a council to help speed up the acquisition and designation of the safe campsites? I know you're working on it, and this is not a criticism. I'm just trying to find a way to get to the finish line faster because, as you know, the problems are still out there and they're still growing.
Councilor Groves, I'll start with answering the question, and Matt, feel free to chime in if there's anything I've missed. We feel very, very supported by council and the mayor in finding this land, and especially in working with the chamber. One of the things that we recognize is that people want to have complete information before we start rolling out specific sites. And so we're being very thoughtful and deliberate about how we go about building that trust and confidence in the areas that we're looking at. So as we get closer to where we feel like people are ready to start talking about specific sites and are comfortable with thinking about it, one of the first things that we'll be doing is reaching out to the counselors that the ward, the area of the geographic distribution and the ward, to talk to the counselor, to give them an update and to help you all be involved. And the next thing we would be doing is doing some more outreach around the surrounding areas. We're intending that by the next time that we come back in June, we will actually have specific sites that we will potentially be able to act on. And so I know it feels slow, but this is one of those cases where going slow and being deliberate and thoughtful actually will yield better results in our experience. And so, but I appreciate the offer, and we feel extremely supported. And if there's things that you guys continue to hear, it's very helpful to us in relaying that to Ed and to our land team and how we're looking at the spaces that are available. But there's a lot of work that's going into it. And then, kind of trying to figure out that balance of, is it a better lease option? How long can we be in the space? And looking at a lot of factors. So I really appreciate that, Councilor Groves.
Thank you. That actually helps, just even having a target of June with some actual sites. And because that's a question I get a lot is, well, you're working on this, how much longer? What's the timeline? And, I have no idea. So that gives another speaking point, and I appreciate that. I'm not looking for a lot of detail on this, but, one of the questions I also get from some of the private property owners is, hey, if we put up property to use for one of these sites, what will we get in return? I mean, not even money. I mean, they just want to know that if they give up a site, are they still going to have like the on-street issues that are, and I'm speaking specifically about the businesses where they still are having problems getting their trucking in and out, and wanting to know what kind of assurances that they will have. So has there been any work on that specifically?
Well, as we think about the transition plans and moving people into the designated sites as they get established, what we realize is that there's still going to be a number of people that maybe will choose not to go to those sites, and we will continue to enforce around those areas, especially what we refer to as kind of the hotspot areas where there's a large group of people, and that is impacting our the business flow to certain areas. We will definitely be mindful of that. And we're working with the parking staff team to really develop a thoughtful strategy moving forward. And as Matt said, the next public hearing on the potential ordinance changes, I think, is scheduled for June 14th. And so there'll be continuing ongoing discussions related to that, and continuing to support the needs of the businesses out in, especially in the West Side, which I know we hear a lot from. And so the other thing is that, we can work out lease agreements. Ed is also considering, like, is there any other agreements related to things that will help people feel compelled or safe with establishing these sites, and knowing that we'll be there to support in all the ways that Reagan talked about when she was presenting.
Well, thank you for that. And I don't need an answer to this now, but I'm hoping at a future update, we can talk a little bit or hear your thoughts on exactly what do we do with the people that either refuse to go to the site or get asked to leave the site because of behavioral issues, and how we're going to address that. So that's that piece. And then the last question I had was, you mentioned moving people from riparian zones and near playgrounds. And I did have somebody who's listening in text me and ask, what does that mean? Where do they go? So are they being directed to Washington Jefferson and West 13th? And I see I'm out of time, but if you could just answer that, I'll be done. Thank you.
Matt,
So Counselor, my understanding is we're not directing them to any specific place. So we have, within the framework that's been established right now for how we prioritize enforcement, there are places, again, playgrounds next to a waterway, where we give a 24-hour notice. We don't do a warning. There are other places that we have for lower enforcement as we're making this lower priority enforcement, as we make this transition, where we can say, hey, you're meeting this expectation and it's okay to stay there for the time being, or you're not. And here's a warning for 48 hours to correct these things so you can stay in this place.
Thank you. I just wanted the listeners to hear that. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Alan, and then Jennifer.
Yeah, one of my questions is about the timeline, and Christy answered that we will be getting the next steps on sites in June. So that's good to hear. This is an awesome update. Thank you very much for all this work that Unified Command has been doing, all this, Christy and Matt and Ed and all the other from Reagan, for all the stuff that you've been doing. It's really good work, and it's lots of progress in a very short period of time. And so I'm impressed by our ability to get off the dime and move fast and pivot to a new way of thinking about this that many of us came to a long time ago, or not too long ago, but that we need to do something different in these bigger sites or where we need to go. So all of this just can't happen fast enough for most people. I think that's great. And despite having done an enormous amount of stuff on homelessness, a great deal of stuff, more than almost any city in the West, there's still people that say we're not doing anything. I've actually had somebody say that to me. And we are doing a great deal. I think it would be very helpful if we could get like a one-pager cheat sheet for the council that's just bullet points about all the things that we have done and the things that we are doing. Maybe it's one page each because there is so much going on. I created my own, but I don't think it's comprehensive enough, and maybe we could get that to us and with a one-pager bulleted list or two-pager. And I also think it might behoove us to pull together an op-ed piece on what we have done and what we are doing, and put that in both the weekly and the Guard. And so another way to get the word out about what we're doing, because communication is very difficult on this because it's very complicated. And then finally, I appreciate the timeline and what Christy said. This is one of those instances where you go slow to go fast. If we take a little bit of time right now to get this right and roll this out, we'll be able to move into it much faster than if we blow it and go too fast and not dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So I very much appreciate the pace that we're going at, and I think it'll in the end get us to where we want to be in a faster time frame. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer, and then Matt.
Thanks, Mayor. I too will echo, it is very nice to hear that we'll be getting some more information back in June. I really appreciate the consistent progress that you guys have been making on this and keeping us very well informed about what's going on. There was something we touched on in the meeting before this. It was that with the idea of whether there would be options, low barrier options for folks who are, challenged with drug addictions. And it sounds like from the presentation that we're not there yet, but I was wondering I think someone mentioned that there were conversations ongoing about that. And I was just wondering if there was some kind of update on the future possibility of that option.
Go ahead, Reagan, if you want to weigh in.
Sure. So it's interesting, Councillor Ye, that I find that, low barrier can mean a number of things to different people. I would say in a lot of ways that we are trying to structure these sites to be low barrier. Folks they're not going to be drug tested. They don't have to be sober to enter. We have implemented, rules similar to our rest stops, around, for example, no drug use on site. And we really try to make that behavior-based, or we really try to have a focus on behavior-based and lean into our social service providers who are trained and skilled in working with this population and trained in, crisis de-escalation and things like that, to also employ best practices around harm reduction and client-centered practices to work with people where they're at in their lives while maintaining certain standards for health and safety of the people at the site as well as the neighbors. So, I think it depends on how you think about low barrier. But, we have to, with these sites, we'll be working to balance low barrier with, maintaining a safe and healthy site.
So let me clarify. So what I'm hearing is it's not necessary for you to be able, someone could qualify for one of the sites while working on a drug addiction, while still trying to manage that, as long as there wasn't a behavior that put others at risk. Is that kind of what we're saying? So in a way, they are low barrier to an extent that everyone is safe at the site.
Yeah. Safety is critical. We hear that from people experiencing homelessness too, very much so, that when they go into a program, they want to ensure their safety as well. So that's critical.
I can imagine. Yeah, I just imagine that, if you're not in a stable position, trying to work on or manage an addiction must be nearly impossible. Having that, stable living environment would be a critical first step, I would think. And if we can find ways to be a part of that solution, that is fantastic. All right, thank you. My other questions were already asked. I look forward to June.
Thank you, Matt, and then Claire.
Great, thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Reagan and Christy and Matt. I don't know if Ed's with us, but thank you to Ed and thank you to the entire Unified Command team responding to the unhoused population's emergency needs. I am curious about the slide that showed the amount of folks living in vehicles, the amount of folks who are urban camping, for lack of a better term, the amount of folks who are living in parks. If we could revisit that slide, please. The number of folks in parks seemed remarkably low. And I'm wondering if that includes Wash Jeff or if that's just limited to Wash Jeff. So I'll pause there, and I've got some follow-ups in regards to pet accommodations and some best practices from Medford, Walla Walla, and San Diego. And I also want to hone in on the buckets of improvement. Reagan mentioned housing, income, and health and support systems. And I wanted to know the improvements that the team is looking into in regards to behavioral mental health, as well as physical health, and what service providers we're partnering with in that arena. I'll pause there, Mayor. I may have some follow-ups.
Councilor Keating, is this a slide you were thinking of?
The one before this, I believe. Before or after?
So I do want to reiterate, this is not the number of people. This is the number of requests for service.
Got it. Oh, so that's helpful clarification, because in a previous work session, we were informed that in March of 2020 there were 379 folks living in vehicles. In March of 2021, that number spiked to 879, and so I was interpreting this as there are now 955 people living in vehicles. But is that interpretation incorrect?
Yes, this is just requests that we're receiving from the public or from our team. This is not indicative of the number of people. So as you said, for instance, in the parks number, this does not reflect the number of people at Washington Jefferson, but it would reflect the number of requests for service we're hearing from the community regarding Washington Jefferson, as well as any other park location.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Reagan mentioned pet accommodations. Is there anyone we're partnering with in regards to providing licensing, shots, inoculations at no charge if we're going to be having pets live? And I hope folks can stay with their pets. As a four-legged is a all-star member of my family.
Thank you for that question, Counselor. We certainly will be looking at ways to partner and do that so that we can make sure that, particularly if we were to require pets to be licensed, that we are offering a way for people to easily do that. So that's definitely in our plans. That's
great. I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. You mentioned Medford, Walla Walla, and San Diego. One of those communities I've lived in and done radio for quite some time. What best practices from the aforementioned communities has the team gleaned?
Yeah, and I've been trying to think about both those bigger cities and smaller communities that are doing these types of things. But I think some of the highlights from some of those conversations have really been about the service provision. People implement or communities implementing things like peer support and bringing services on site for these populations that people need, whether that's, medical and wound care, mental health supports, the case management and housing navigation is key. I've been with San Diego. I talked to them about their safe parking program, which they're pretty proud of. And they have really been intentional around that case management that they bring on site every day, and make that a core focus, as well as opportunities for group dinners and things like that are about community building. I don't think there's been a whole lot that's been completely surprising, but kind of more validating about the things we're hearing from our local providers. And then other communities as well. The other thing is that particularly if sites have been set up over the past year during COVID-19, a lot of cities have gone to this central referral system to help people access various shelters that have been getting set up in cities. And they've said that that's been really critical.
Great, thank you. And I want to express my gratitude for the electricity hookups and potable water in the draft site plan. There are folks who have health issues, like myself, who might be hooked up to a CPAP 8 hours a night. And that's a life-saving machine. So I really appreciate looking out for folks with those needs. Like counselors before me have mentioned, I'll wrap this up as my time's coming to a close. I do have concerns about folks who get moved from one site to another for behavioral issues. And I think this is an opportune time to lean in and advocate for an adult crisis center with our county partners. So when folks do get moved from A to B and it's not working, there has to be a reasonable C that's not a jail or an emergency room. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire and then Mike.
Thank you. And speaking of four-legged friends who are part of your family, I have a new kitten who is scaling the walls of my office right now. So that's why I'm a little bit distracted. So this is super impressive work. I'm really gratified to see this moving along. Obviously, I have constituents who are anxious for alternative sites to open up, who are disappointed that it's not happened already. But I really see our staff taking a thoughtful approach that, from my perspective, seems to be incorporating our lessons learned over the last several years with trying to work on these things. I'm glad to see we are establishing a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. This is a positive development, given that we haven't always had a dialogue like this with that organization. And in years past, that organization tend to lobby criticisms at us and not really necessarily step up to say, how can we help? So that's a great development. I do think, and this kind of, I think, got shortchanged in the presentation. I think it's important to remind people that the reason we're allowing people to set up tents in Washington, Jefferson and other places like that is due to COVID and the CDC recommendations that cities allow people to shelter in place. So we've gone out of our way not to disrupt camps unless they are posing a specific health or public safety hazard. And then ultimately the city manager and senior staff decided that to have Public Works and EPD to start directing more folks to specific places where the city could provide sanitation and garbage collection and other services to mitigate public health impacts while allowing people to shelter in place. So, and that doesn't mean law enforcement hasn't continued to operate at those sites when there was criminal activity and other needs for it. So we have never undertaken anything along these lines before that I'm aware of. We've never had a unified command approach. We, in addition to the criticism Alan mentioned, we get criticism from the other side of people who think we spend way too much money on homeless people and too much services for them. But the fact is, until this work here, we've devoted hardly any, kind of dedicated resources to people. We set up our rest stops without any funding for them and expected nonprofits to figure it out. So I think this is a much wiser approach and recognizes it's been an evolving response as we've learned from past efforts and grappled with the pandemics. I'm also really pleased to see that part of the work will be working to invite people who have created community with one another to move together to a new site in kind of a pod. I think that's a new approach for us and really seems to acknowledge how community is built in our unsheltered community in a way that can really be damaging when we make people relocate. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Mike, and then Emily, and then Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. I first want to say thank you to staff for all the hard work and for the report. Reagan, you mentioned the metrics that you are measuring for growth and change and ability to progress. I'm wondering, do you keep any metrics or have you information or data sources from the county or from City of Eugene now that we've kind of centralized this process, and especially the outreach part, on two things? How long a person has been present in the City of Eugene? Do you keep that kind of information or ask that information of someone that you're working with?
So that kind of information would be collected through the homeless management information system that the county administers and that social service agencies use. There is a question.
Only the question, what was your last address, or did they actually ask, how long have you been present in the city?
I don't know the answer. I know they asked, what was your last address? I don't know about the second. I would have to get back to you on that.
That's a piece of information missing because I think it leads to inaccurate conclusions about a number of things we make decisions on. And I would appreciate it if there were a way we could get that answer in large scale numbers to say X percent of people have been in our community for 6 months or less, or X percent have been here for years and years. That's a piece of information that I think will help lead us to better decisions. The second piece of information there, what was I thinking? I'm sorry, I've lost track of talking about that one. How long have they been in the community? And what brought them to homelessness in the first place? Do we ask that? What event or what series of events brought them to homelessness in the first place?
I don't know that that's collected in HMIS. I think it's something that case managers probably work with people through as they address, their barriers to housing. But I would have to check, but I don't believe that is a question that's asked as part of the HMIS assessment.
It would seem to me that if we had larger scale statistics on what drives homelessness in the first place, we might better focus our efforts on prevention. If we had some actual knowledge from people specifically, what brought them to homelessness in the first place. So if we're not asking that, I hope we will begin. And then lastly, I know that drug use will not be allowed on premises in many of these in these camps that we are creating. I have heard from many folks in and around camps previously that some folks with drug addictions or issues will oftentimes leave, go into surrounding neighborhoods, use drugs on private property, and come back to the camp. Are we working to police that specific issue?
So one of the rules I mentioned is going to be around no trespassing or theft on neighboring properties. So that is something we're going to be working to address. We know that it's been an issue at the current, locations, Washington, Jefferson, and 13th and Chambers. So that is something we're going to be working to address through the rules.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emily, and then Greg.
Thank you for the report, and thank you for all the work. I've been waiting for this work for a long time, so I'm pretty darn excited. I really appreciate that you're taking the approach of looking at what people need themselves and how we can help them progress to housing. I think that will lead us to success. I think that's really important. And I also like the efforts to keep people together, take care of dogs, medically fragile. It'd be good to have a place for people in recovery, families, women, LGBTQ, and so on. I think that's something we need to really keep track of. So my concern is the population that we're working with. Are people coming from elsewhere? Feels like we have such an increase in camping and vehicles. Where were they all before? Are we seeing a lessening in certain areas to think about this? Is there any data on license plates, such as in West Eugene, where there's so many vehicles that aren't sanctioned? I think that would be very interesting. As the COVID restrictions end, if we don't have alternative places yet, will we start enforcing our camping laws again, or will we wait for alternative sites? And a really big question is the looming evictions and foreclosures. And those, the foreclosures will be empty for a while, which is a shame. But what's going to happen with all of those people? That's going to really, I believe, increase our need. So that's a whole bunch of questions, but I love the work and I'd like the answer to the questions. Thank you.
Councilor Simple, thanks for the questions. And yes, there are a lot of questions. One of the questions I think that, we are thinking about those different demographics in terms of setting up the camps. And I think that that outreach work that Reagan spoke to and how we're understanding what the demographic is and what the needs are of that demographic will really help us figure out how to to organize people in their communities that they've established and in having them be successful in newer communities. And so we're really working on that. And so all the things you brought up are all things that we're thinking about. And I think we just need more additional information. I think Councillor Clark also touched on a bunch of data points, and you also mentioned some data points that we're looking into figuring out. How do we gather more information? How do we learn more about why people are here, what brought them, to this place of finding themselves unhoused, and how long have they been unhoused, and things like that. And so we're continuing. We know some anecdotal information from conversations that staff have, but to my knowledge, we don't have a lot of data, from a survey or, anything in HMIS that Reagan was talking about. And so I think we need to continue to do a better assessment of that and gather better information so that it will help us in the long run. And it actually will help us understand as we move forward, is that demographic changing? Are we reducing the inflow or the problem? With respect to looming evictions and foreclosures, I think there's some work that's happening with other teams, and we'd be happy to get you more information about that. The specific focus of this team is not on the prevention side, but really establishing these particular safe sites. So, but we can get you more information about that. What did I forget? License plate data. We will talk with Travis Hargett and Jeff Petrie about the license plate data. I know that what I've also heard is that DMV is very behind in some of the transitions. I myself have sold something recently, and I don't think that title transfer has happened to really understand how people acquired, where they acquired from, and who is actually in some of the vehicles. And so some of that data gathering will take a look at too, and get you, and when we come back in June, we can hopefully provide more information.
I'm hearing anecdotally when people are asked and they say they're from somewhere else, and they're asked why, they say because they've heard you can live here for free. And that seems to be the case. So we have warm hearts. I don't want to stop that. And I know you can't keep people from coming here, but I think that, we could go broke, which leads me to my last question. How are we paying for this right now before we get recovery money, or are we just borrowing from potential recovery money? Thanks.
It's a good question. So, we're waiting to receive funds. We're waiting to make sure that we know what all the requirements around the ARPA fund use is. You might recall that the city manager in the FY22 proposed budget had set aside $750,000 to help homeless support. There are some staffing needs in there, and also other support services that are part of that funding. And other funding that you guys took action on recently was the COVID CV3 dollars that will help with the outreach work in coordination with the county and other service providers to help us with that work. So there's some things that we already have money for. And then when we look at land acquisition, we're hoping to have a better sense of exactly what we're looking for, whether it's lease or acquisition dollars, and working closely with the city manager to identify funds if the ARPA funds are not available for use at that time.
Thank you. That looks like a big looming amount of money to buy or lease. And so we need to do that part. Good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help.
Thanks.
Okay, Greg has a turn, and I see 3 counselors with the second round, and I'm not going to give you a second round because we have another agenda item and it is already 1 o'clock. So we'll be coming back. You'll have an opportunity to ask those questions of staff. And Greg, you can round it up, please.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor. I think that this is really good work that you guys done in a very short period of time. And in reading the AIS, one of the things that I didn't see was what is kind of the comprehensive public safety plan as we expand the number of sites that we have and the size of those sites. I've mentioned this because I had a conversation with a constituent last week who had a confrontation with somebody who was clearly connected with the Washington Jefferson encampment, and that person pretty much had some kind of, mental health issue or whatever, but he threatened the man with a knife and he was just going to go in and do some work. Police responded, and dealt with the situation. But my assumption is that we're probably going to need more police and possibly a different way for fire to respond to emergency situations, such as, people who have passed out on, drug overdoses and that kind of thing. What are those plans? And do we really have the people power to staff the public safety response that this is going to dictate?
Councilor Evans, thanks for the question. And it's really, safety is primary, not only for the people, the unhoused that are in the camps, but for all of the surrounding area. And it's front of mind for us. And so I'd be happy to report on that if you'd be okay more comprehensively when we return and give more information in our next update. If you need information in advance of that, I'd be happy to do that too. So
I think I could wait till the next round when we talk about this. But at the same time, I think that having that plan in place and knowing what that plan is meets a sense of urgency that our communities have, and particularly those that are adjacent to these encampments that have suffered, theft and other things that have gone on. I know people who have opened their front door and had somebody sleeping on their porch or their front step, which is quite disturbing for anybody. But if you're a woman living alone or somebody else who potentially could be vulnerable to physical violence, or robbery or theft of different items. I note that Monroe Park has had some issues, and some other places have issues too. And those were basically illegal camping situations. What I really want to know, what our plan is, how are we going to handle it, and what does it, entail in terms of increased cost in people power and other related costs to it.
Okay.
That's your homework.
All very good questions, and clearly council is eager for more information, but I do want to move on to our second item of business today. So thank you, and you can forward other questions to staff for the next round. And so with that, I am going to close out this meeting of the City Council and open a session of the Urban Renewal Agency. And I will turn that over to the City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm just going to have Amanda D'Souza jump right in. Thanks, Amanda.
Yep, I will try to speed this up where I can. So today I'm here to talk about the redevelopment of the steam plant. As you will recall, we last spoke to you about the riverfront on March 8th, where we provided information on the Riverfront Urban Renewal District's financial capacity and 4 projects, including the steam plant, Plaza, affordable housing, and parking. This is the first of the follow-up work sessions to talk about those projects, and we're hoping to come back this summer to talk about the other 3. So the downtown riverfront has seen a lot of progress over the past 2 years. As you know, the park and infrastructure should be completed this year, and the vertical development is getting ready to break ground by early next year. And today we're here to talk about another critical piece, the steam plant. It's anchored prominently at the southern end of the development site. The steam plant has the potential to be a place of community pride that connects the city to the river. But as you can imagine, bringing the building into its next chapter will be challenging and will require collaboration, resources, and an experienced team. Since it's been a while since you've heard about the project and there's a couple of new board members, I'll recap how we got to where we are today. In April 2018, you approved a process and criteria for the disposition and redevelopment of the steam plant. These can both be found in Attachment B. The request for qualifications was released in May of 2018. We chose to start with an RFQ with the goal of finding the most qualified and experienced team, knowing that the project was going to be very unique and very complex. In August of 2018, the agency director invited a development team led by Mark Mixis of DeChase Mixis and Mark Frohnmeyer of Arcimoto, who I'll refer to as the Dream Plant team, to prepare a full proposal for the steam plant. In early 2019, we partnered with the team to complete a community outreach process, which I'll touch more on next. In April of 2019, the agency board reviewed the proposal in Attachment C and directed staff to negotiate with the development team and bring back terms for the sale and development of the property. We were getting close to finalizing deal points and bringing them to council in early 2020, but then the pandemic hit and we needed to reevaluate the terms, and the development team had to make sure the project was still financially viable in the changing economy. We've updated those terms based on new considerations and brought them to the river guides in April, who recommended moving forward with the team based on the proposed terms. And today we're looking for direction from the agency board on whether you approve the proposed terms in Attachment A. I'll do a quick recap of the community outreach that we've done for this project. In 2018, we solicited feedback on the redevelopment process and criteria, asking for feedback from stakeholder groups like the Downtown Neighborhood Association, Historic Review Board, and Sustainability Commission. The River Guides also provided feedback, and all the feedback was incorporated into the criteria and process the agency board approved. And then, as I mentioned, we teamed up with the Dream Plant to do community outreach in early 2019. This included doing an online survey, attending events like the First Friday Art Walk and Asian Celebration, hosting an open house, and kind of doing a road tour of presentations around the community. The Dream Plant ended up making a number of changes to their design in response to what they heard. So I'll talk a little bit more about what the Dream Plant is proposing. They want to save and adaptively reuse the steam plant, transforming it into a mixed-use center. The ground floor would look out onto the river and would draw in community members with space for food, drink, retail, art, and gathering. The upper floors would provide the fiscal foundation for the building, and the proposal initially included exclusively office uses in the upper floors. However, given market changes since 2019 and the anticipated COVID-related impacts to the demand for office space, they're now exploring other uses such as residential or hospitality. The building would be integrated with the Southern Plaza area shown here, and I'll touch more on later. The city will design the Southern Plaza, which includes the overlook on the water intake plant, in conjunction with the main plaza. And the Southern Plaza is included in the capital improvement plan with funding available in FY26. I'll now go through some of the key proposed terms, and the full list of terms can be found in Attachment A. To start, and probably most importantly, the Dream Plant will keep and adaptively reuse the building. They would list the building on the National Historic Register, which adds specific preservation requirements. We added flexibility into the project description. As I mentioned, they're exploring the other uses that would provide the fiscal foundation in the upper floors, such as office, residential, and hospitality. And during due diligence, the team would provide the chosen use for approval by the agency director. It's important to note that the uses of the upper floors would not impact the ground floor, which will still be a space accessible to the community with uses like food, drink, retail, and arts. The city and the Dream Plant team would enter into a future agreement for the use and maintenance of the Southern Plaza areas. Under this agreement, the park property would remain open to anybody who would like to use it, and the Dream Plant would maintain the patio and overlook areas and manage exclusive concession rights. The next term is related to parking. The team anticipates needing about 150 parking spots to serve future uses at the site. The steam plant property itself can fit about 25 spots. And so for this term, the agency is committing to working with the team to identify 125 additional spaces. As you know, we're looking at how the riverfront's general parking supply meets the overall site's needs. And the steam plant's needs are part of that conversation. And we'll be coming back to talk to you more about parking and transportation on the overall riverfront at a future work session. Next, we wanted to flag for you that should the team decide to pursue multifamily uses on the upper floors, they would be interested in applying for a MUPD. They would follow the normal MUPD application process with the review panel and neighborhood engagement and would need to meet the 7 public benefits. Next, closing on the property and construction would need to happen no later than January 31st, 2023, though they could start earlier if they wanted to. The agency would sell the building, which has a negative value, to Dream Plant for $1. And then the agency's direct investment would consist of 2 pieces. The agency would pay for abatement of the remaining asbestos in the building, which in 2019 was estimated to cost about $350,000. The estimate may have gone up. We know construction prices have gone up, and we're unsure about this type of labor specifically. The agency would also pay for the SDCs and permits. In 2019, these were estimated to be a little over $1 million if the project included office space. It's hard to anticipate how these estimates would change until we know details about the final uses. I'll talk about some of the financial considerations to keep in mind as you consider the proposed terms. As we mentioned in March, the projected district capacity after we sell properties to Atkins Dame would be about $2.4 million. The proposed agency investment in the steam plant, which would be for asbestos abatement, SDCs, and permits, we estimate would be about $1.5 to $2 million. Our preliminary estimates we had in 2019 were about $1.4 million, and we anticipate these would likely increase. The 2019 appraised value of the building is negative $8 million. This takes into account the significant cost of preserving and renovating the building. And then finally, based on their 2019 proposal, the Dream Plant team estimated the project would cost about $22 million. Likely with the rising construction prices, this cost has gone up, but based on all of our current estimates, the agency's investment would make up about 7 to 9% of the project cost. The River Guides, who are the advisory group for the Riverfront Urban Renewal District, met last month to review the proposed terms in Attachment A. They discussed the potential uses, parking, asbestos, changes in financing, and MUPD timing, and then unanimously recommended the proposed terms with the Dream Plant team. If you provided us with direction today, here's what the potential next steps would look like. We'd work with our attorneys to draft and enter into a disposition and development agreement with the team. The team would start their due diligence later this year, finalizing design and securing financing. The agency board would take budget action next year on the identified investments for the steam plant, and then construction would start no later than January 2023. I'll close with reminding you that adaptive reuse of the existing building is going to be ambitious, facing extraordinary challenges that include environmental, seismic, and financial obstacles. Because of those obstacles and the cost to address them, the steam plant has a negative value, and the project is likely only feasible with financial support from the agency or city. I'll leave you with the agency director's recommendation and then pass it back to you for discussion, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I won't delay turning this over to counselors. I have Alan and then Greg and Jennifer. Alan, take it away.
Good. I have 7 questions. I'll just go down the list on the terms list. So the removal of the asbestos prior to closing. So there's a risk associated that if it doesn't close, then we would have done that for with no benefit.
I mean, the building needs to be remediated at any point, no matter who we would be selling or transferring the building to. So the value that is associated with that would remain with the building.
And we would do that regardless if we were going to demolish the building.
I mean, I think even if we demolish it, there would still need to be some remediation that happened just in dealing with this stuff.
Okay. Next then isn't a question, it's a comment. The change from office space to housing potentially is a pretty big change. Can't see how multifamily housing actually works and that pans out financially. What does hospitality mean?
So that's like hotel uses.
Okay. Should just say hotel. On the MUPD, is this a pre-approval of a MUPD?
No, it's just, we just want to flag for you that they're interested in applying, so that if a couple years down the line they do apply, you're not caught off guard.
Right, and that's wanted to say that. On parking, I'm not sure what this means. What does it mean that we will work with buyer to identify access to? Parking is very expensive. We don't have much money in the urban renewal district. And so who would pay for that? And does identify access to mean we will provide it?
It's a mix. So it's purposefully left open-ended. We're going to work with them to find parking. Right now with the MGP site, we're going to be preserving about 65 spots there. So that makes a pretty good dent in that 125 number. But we're going to work with them to look for partnerships, look for other parking supply availability, and kind of just even help facilitate conversations to identify parking. If it ends up being that it's public parking that they end up using, they would have similar access, the same access to buying permits to serve their users.
So this is not a promise to provide 125 spots.
Yeah, because we know that we don't have the resources to promise that we're going to build 125 spots. And so we're just showing our commitment to continue working with them to find that supply.
Okay. And the Mgp site, for people who don't know, is the site. You can explain that?
Yeah, it's the site that's next to the substation. We are currently in the process of purchasing it from eWeb. There was a pretty simple parking lot already there. So we're preserving the parking that's there. It'll be a much nicer parking lot than what was there before.
Thanks. Southern Plaza use agreement. So I'm confused what the Southern Plaza is. Is that on the overlook? That seemed to me like that's on the north side of the building. Or is the Southern Plaza different?
It's to the east of the steam plant. So it's between the steam plant and the river. There's a little plant over there. That's the water intake plant that's kind of fenced off. So that's where the overlook would be. And then the Southern Plaza area would be kind of like a patio area that's next to the steam plant. It's part of the park property. Agency board previously gave direction that to do a property line adjustment, so that transfers that portion of the property into the park. And so it would all be part of the park property.
So is the Southern Plaza between the overlook and the building?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't seem to be south to me.
Well, so it's southern, it's south, in reference to the main plaza area associated with the park. So there's that 1 acre plaza that's part of the park. We're looking at this as the Southern Plaza in that realm. But I could see where the confusion is.
Oh, I see. So it's related to that the park plaza. Okay.
Yeah.
SDCs. I suspect that SDCs would be higher with a multifamily development, wouldn't it?
So
right about $1 million.
Yeah, so I tried to do some homework without knowing the specific number of like units and size of the units. It's hard to come up with an estimate. There are certain SDCs that would go up and certain ones that would go down. So it's definitely something that we're going to have, once we know what the plan for the building is and what the parameters are, that we could get a better estimate.
Right. Oh, and one thing on the Southern Plaza, exclusive concession rights. So that's if they put in that would be like the patio area to serve people concessions.
Yeah.
Right.
So the idea is that the area would still be open to the broader community to use, but the Dream Plant would manage any kind of vending that happens in those areas.
Because they would own the footprint of the building, which ends at the wall.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So the total ask right now is like $1.5 million plus parking, or there 1.3, 1.5 plus parking, but depends on what happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a lot of confusion about the appraised value. Can you explain a little bit more why it's negative $8 million?
It factors in. Yeah, the appraisal that was conducted is called a residual land value. It looks at what the value of the building would be when it's completed versus the cost to actually complete that building. So basically, with some math, and I'm not an appraiser, the end up value is that the cost exceed kind of the end value of the building by negative $8 million. So just recognizing it's a very complicated and expensive building to rehab.
So either rehabbing or take it down and cleaning it up, all that is additional cost before you could.
Yeah, and so that. That
That's the
value
next.
is based on the proposal that that is being considered. So if it was a different proposal or if the building was demolished, that valuation would change.
Right. And I often think about what do we get for our investment? So 1.5 million or so. What would be the public benefits that we would accrue?
In terms of like the building cost itself would be 22 million. We get the we preserve the community space on the first floor. We kind of get to see a project that we want to have, a vibrant mixed use project that would bring positive activity to the riverfront area.
And we get the tax revenue on the 22 million.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And then the whole build out of the plaza and the overlook.
And that's part of the park, and they would be maintaining that.
That's all I got, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Greg, I have a long line of counselors. If you can be succinct, that would be great because we do have a motion and it is already 1:22. So just a time check. Greg, take it away. And then Claire.
I need a whole lot less time than what everybody else needs. So tell me this. One of the things that I've been particularly concerned about is the extension of the urban renewal district, whether or not, because we're coming up to the end of the time period for the district to exist, will we need to extend it to be able to accrue more money into the fund, contingent upon other asks that may be made by the developer? Because, I'm concerned that the developer may or may not be able to put together the total amount of money that they need to do the development. And so we will have another ask at some point to cover some other areas of the development before things get off the ground.
I can take a shot at that, Amanda. The extension of the urban renewal district, either in time or its spending limit, is really a policy decision for council and the agency. And typically that's been based on what projects do we still want to accomplish in the district, and is this the right tool to do it? So, if you determine that there's still some other projects either in the riverfront or in the rest of the riverfront urban renewal district that we would want to accomplish, this would be the tool that you would talk about doing that. So it's really a policy decision based on what you want to do within that boundary.
And so how far could we extend the district if we need to? We go out to 2027, 2028?
That too is a policy decision, again, based on what projects you want to accomplish, how much those projects cost. And the time is really a function of the spending limit. So the higher the spending limit gets, the more time you need to generate that revenue to pay for those projects.
Thanks, Denny.
Okay, Claire, then Jennifer.
Thanks, Mayor. So I've been a big fan of this project. I still am, but it gives me a lot of heartburn to sign off on deal points that say we're gonna waive all SDCs when we don't know what's gonna happen in that building. I mean, that seems to me like a big unknown. And the SDC's difference between office space versus housing versus hospitality are gonna be significantly different. And I cannot approve these deal points today. I can't vote yes on this with that much uncertainty in the framework. So I don't know if I'm going to be a no vote today, or if we can put off the vote. If there was an up to amount, we will waive them up to a certain amount. That would give me the certainty I need to feel okay about that. I'm fine with all the other deal points, even the uncertainty about the parking, but that one's not going to work for me.
Councilor Siret, if there was an up to amount, would the and it ends up being higher, let's say it ends up being higher and that's a gap, would you be open to them coming back after that to even ask? Or is it this is it, and that's just in your, I know you haven't had a lot of time to think about that. I was just curious.
I mean, I always think people can come back and ask again, right? And council can deliberate at that time. But, you know, and I don't think we are giving away, you know, an unreasonable subsidy here, right? In terms of what we're offering on our part for this deal, and what we're going to get back is, you know, potentially tremendous. But just that big total unknown, not even a range in the deal points, that's not something I can feel good about voting yes on. So no, I wouldn't interpret it as saying this is all we'll ever give you, or this is all we'll ever consider giving you. But the way it's written now, you know, it's completely an unknown. And when it was office space, then, you know, we could kind of determine what the range of those SDCs would be, but with not knowing what they're going to end up doing there, it's too big a question mark for me.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Okay, Jennifer and then Matt.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think Claire brings up a very good point about the uncertainty in that area. And yeah, it is an uncomfortable thing to be able to say. So I appreciate Alan's question about the negative value. I had a lot of questions about that in the community myself. And I'm wondering, do we know, it's still a little unclear to me, I guess. And I'm wondering for folks, do we know what the value of the property would be had we chosen to just not save the property and we're just going to sell it?
We don't know that. I wasn't within the scope of the appraisal to calculate that. Sounds like Denny might chime in.
Oh, we know the land value because we've done appraisals on the rest of the site. So you could say the land value is somewhere in the neighborhood of, with the infrastructure completed, is somewhere in, let's just say $35 a square foot. So the way you would calculate the property value, if you were going to demo it, is the land value minus the demolition cost. So in that case, you know, even if you plan to demo the building, there's not a lot of value there, because once you factor in the demo cost, the land value kind of gets depleted. So it's hard to say, but it wouldn't be much. That land value minus the demo cost would not really be much.
When you say not much, like, what is not much to you? Like a couple million, a couple 100,000? I'm just kidding.
You know, I'll use the old LCC building downtown. That's how we derived the value, and the value was like 1.6 million minus 700,000 to demo. So the value of that property ended up being about half of what you know, you might have if the building was going to stay there and it was usable. So, you know, it might be it might be half of the value. It's hard to say because I don't know the square footage of the land and I can't do the calculation that quick. But
okay. I think it's something that's important. And I just wanted to clarify, when you said there was one of the value in this is community space, what you mean is that the building will not be closed off to the public. It's not necessarily community space in the sense of a community center or that. I just want to make sure people are clear about what we're getting and what we're not getting. So, and I think a maximum where it kicks coming back to us is a good compromise for the SDCs. If I don't know what other people think.
Okay, Matt and then Mike.
Thanks, Mayor. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do a laundry list of questions. I'm going to hone in on just one thing in particular. The river guides met last month, Amanda, and you said that they, I guess they proposed terms with the Dream Plant team. Councilor Groves and I spent time on the river last month, and on that 4-hour tour floating down river left right around where the steam plant is to eWeb, just seemed like the perfect time to get off and get a beer. And I wanted to know if it's too late in the game to adopt some of the river guides suggestions for a river left exit out and up on the river. I guess a boat ramp is probably the more appropriate or accurate term. Or if we're just directing folks to go river right and then come across the DeFazio footbridge, which seems to be visually what's in place right now. How does the river guide's suggestion weave into the future of the potential project?
So I'm not sure what you're referring to. The River Guides, I don't think had any the River Guide is the name that we've given to our advisory committee. I'm not sure they had any suggestions related to accessing the site from the water. I believe there is a kayak access point kind of near the eWeb Plaza, the water fountain. So there is an access point on the left side of the river there. My understanding is that the riverbank is pretty steep near the river, near the steam plant, and doing any sort of access point around there would take quite a bit of infrastructure work.
Okay, thanks. And for the sake of time, I'll just thank Councilor Syrett for bringing up your salient points about a cap, and I would put myself in that same category today. So thank you.
Okay, Mike, and then Emily.
Thank you, Mayor. Amanda, remind me, how many parking places do we need to jointly identify?
125, and there's about 65 have been identified at the Mgp site. So we're down to about 60.
Jenny, remind me how many parking places there are at the eWeb headquarters building?
I don't remember that number, but
really,
it's significant. There's probably 150 or something like that. But
that's my question. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, Emily.
Thank you. First, I'm really frustrated with this session. Homelessness is our biggest issue, and I think it needed more time, and for counselors to not get a second round. I'm very frustrated by this. And in addition, the steam plant is a big project. You're asking us to approve an unknown amount of expenditure, and I don't feel ready to vote on it yet. Again, we're going over time. I think it could have used a further discussion. So I'm unhappy with the agenda today. I will list my questions and not expect an answer, but really, I don't know how I can decide without the answers. The value of the building, I love the steam plant. I want to save it. I like this project, but -8 million, you know, land costs are just zooming up there. So, you know, if we knocked it down, I bet in 4 years it could be worth a ton. You're not going to get a lot of riverfront to develop. It's a really prime piece of property. I think these are good things, but I'm concerned about our expenditure, even though we get a really, you know, cool project for not all that much money. If they put in housing and got a MUPD, would it be just for the housing part? And what do we anticipate the property tax to be on this building? So then it would be decreased by any MUPD. Open to the public, what does that mean? Do you have to buy something to hang around in there? Can you come use the restrooms, or is it going to be like restaurants downtown that you can't use? Sustainability wise, is there going to be any gas infrastructure? And I think that's the SDCs. We use that as our main incentive point, and I'm very concerned about how much they're going to add up to, and we still have to buy them, and we're paying for them out of the general fund. We need different ways to incentivize, or we need a limit on how much SDCs we're going to give away in all the many projects. So I would like to postpone this vote, even though I know it's timely. I don't feel that we had enough discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I am going to turn to the manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was actually going to recommend that too, that we come back with a little bit more information on what we're hearing around questions about the value of the building and how we're interpreting that and the land and all of that. So you're really clear about what that is. And and not to exceed potential amounts so that you aren't stepping into something too big or too fast. So I think let us do a little bit of that work and we can bring it back. You don't need to vote today.
And parking.
And I see Greg. Yes, another comment.
Not a comment, but a motion to table this discussion till a date certain, so that we can get more information and be able to have a broader discussion. And maybe this may take some more than 45 minutes or 30 minutes to have that conversation.
Second.
There's not currently a motion on the table to table, but certainly can, if you want a date specific that they'll be coming back with additional information, that would be appropriate.
And I would recommend, if you're going to do that, that you say that potentially you're doing a date not to go beyond, like prior to your summer break or prior to, because some of those date certains we get in trouble with when we have other things coming to the agenda that you have to act on a certain night.
Well, let's say date certain is July 31st.
By July 31st?
By July 31st.
Okay.
Okay. Is that okay with whoever seconded, who I didn't? Yes. Okay. All right.
It's not technically a motion to table, it's a motion to.
It's a motion to bring back the requested information by July 31st.
Before.
Before.
Prior to your summer break, yeah.
Yeah, prior to summer break. Emily, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just want to know what the effect would be on the developers. If we approve it, we want things to go ahead quickly. And because I like the project and want to approve it, I don't want to make things harder for the developers. Thank you.
I think they'll be okay. I think they probably heard good things in the discussion that will help them, and we can have some further discussion with them and get some clarity. And I think having the date certain before July will be good for them too.
Okay, great. Thank you all for that. All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. That passes unanimously. I think that's an excellent decision. Thank you very much, everyone, for the conversation, for all the information. We look forward to the update. And with that, we are adjourned.